let's get started. At any point, if you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat. Feel free to just unmute and start talking, because I'm talking with my camera on with a virtual background in my bedroom, and it's kind of weird just to kind of talk at my computer alone and hearing nothing. So feel free to interrupt at any point. Denise, you're going to welcome and say hi and introduce me, though, right?
Yes, good morning, everybody. On behalf of the Santa Cruz County Office of Education, I want to officially welcome you and thank you for joining us today. This session, as titled there on the screen, Create a Culture of Collaboration at a Distance, Leveraging Gsuite for Administrators. So I want to welcome Bill Selleck from Hillbrook School in Los Gatos, and we will be monitoring the chat. So go ahead, as Bill said, and put your questions there. I'll keep an eye on that. And just to let you know, the session is being recorded. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Bill. You're muted.
So awkward. I had to do that on purpose, just so that, you know, if anyone else wants to talk and they start talking and they're like, oh, I've been talking to myself. So my role is twofold. My official role is Director of Technology at Hillbrook School. We're an independent school. And so we are smaller, much smaller than most of your schools. Little under 400 students, about 80 employees. So we have, you know, the smaller problems, not the bigger scale problems. Before I was at Hillbrook, my other role is cinnamon roll. My favorite role is a cinnamon roll. Before I was at Hillbrook, I was teaching elementary school down in kind of LA area, Pasadena-ish. At a Title I school, I was teaching kindergarten, second grade, fourth and fifth grade music. So yeah, there you have it. Oh, I see a chat. Where's my chat? Independent means private. So not charter, which gives us a lot more flexibility because we don't have all of the rules. So we're gonna look at this in kind of 4 buckets of looking at innovation and ways to connect and lead through Google tools. I'm not gonna read those out loud because you're able to read yourself. So that first bucket, we looked at curiosity and what that means to actually be kind of curious with Google tools, particularly as an administrator. So one thing I just want to tell you just kind of a little bit about our school, and it's so awkward with my broken finger, although if I hide it, my virtual background, it disappears and it's less awkward. At Hillbrook, I think we're kind of best summarized by something new. This was our second year with a new schedule that we did, and Reach Beyond Block was a new thing. So part of our school's mission and vision is for students to reach beyond themselves and make a difference in the world. And we actually spent 2 years going through our schedule redesign process. And at some point, I actually just kind of asked, I was like, so like we say our goals for students to reach beyond themselves and make a difference in the world, where does that show up in the school day? And just kind of collectively, everyone's like, oh, it doesn't. We just kind of say that, but we actually don't dedicate time to it. So for our middle school kids, it's once a week on Tuesday afternoons, and then our younger learners, it's on Thursday afternoon. So Reach Beyond Block is an opportunity to have kind of non-traditional programming, and it's awesome. It's not necessarily one thing. It's mostly teacher-driven. Sometimes students will lead blocks. It's mixed age groups. We sometimes will just have 1 week. Sometimes it'll be like a 6-week group. So, you know, I've helped to lead it. One of the great things about being an administrator at Hillbrook is that I actually get to plan, co-teach, and lead these sessions. So this photo you're looking at, we were building a podcast studio. And so those are 5th graders all the way through 8th graders. And we looked at what tools we have, what stuff we needed to have, and they actually wired up a podcast studio as part of the building. So behind me is a new building that we're building called The Hub. And it's going to be really the home of all things kind of makery. But also like to say at Hillbrook, we've been making since before it was cool. Our school is 85 years old now. And inside like the kind of the central area, there's an amphitheater where we used to have like all school flag, which was our announcements and assembly at the beginning of the week. I don't know what we're going to do this coming year. We're not going to have 500 people gathered together in that space, but that's what we used to have. And all around it are these village houses that students made like in the 40s, which was really cool. And so the hub behind me is our attempt to continue kind of that legacy of making and really just like genuinely giving students agency to like really be a part of the school, to really like participate and not just kind of consume content. So that's a bit about our school. What does curiosity actually look like in G Suite? I've already talked way too much, so I'm going to let you just hop into one of the apps. I'm going to explain a little bit what the hamburgers and snowmen and drop down are. Um, the easiest thing to do to get kind of next level with your comfortability and your proficiency with G Suite and just all the googly stuff is just to click on all the things. Like it's really, really hard to break the Googles, right? That's not going to happen. And so the hamburgers, if I come over to just open up Google Drive. And by the way, every once in a while, I'm at home right now. If I just disappear, it's because every once in a while I just get kicked off our network and I don't understand why, which is super awkward because I'm a tech director. So if you see me just suddenly disappear, I'll be back within 30 seconds. I just have to rejoin our network. So here's that drop down, right? If I click on that, has anyone clicked on that? Do you know what that is? Have you looked at, right? Suddenly you can search for forms, right? Not owned by me. Things I've modified in the last week, right? And then when I search, you get all this cool stuff up here that you can start minus owner me. What? So here are forms that are not mine. This I call the waffle because it has 9 dots that kind of looks like a waffle. If you, I need to hide you guys. Like if I click over to classroom, maybe you want to dive a little bit more into that. Here's my hamburger, these 3 dots. I'm going to just give you a moment, open up one of the tools, classroom, drive, calendar, something, and click around. Click on the things that you never happen to click on, scroll to the very, very bottom and be like, I wonder what that thing is. Although actually this is a bad example because there's nothing on the bottom of this one, right? But actually click around and see some of the things. I'm going to set a timer for 3 minutes and let you just click on something. And then in the chat, we're going to find something. Just be curious. Click around, find something interesting. I'm going to stop my sharing for a moment. Hey Siri, set a timer for 3 minutes.
Okay, 3 minutes and counting.
3 minutes, go for it. I'm going to even mute myself. All right, well, if you have something, if you're still typing, feel free to continue to type. Again, if you want to just unmute and talk, that's fine. I'm going to go back to sharing my desktop. Somebody asked in the chat about Google Classroom with our adults. So I actually used it for our learning continuity plan. So not too dissimilar from most of you. On Thursday, March 12th, our school decided we're going to shut down. We had parent-teacher conferences that day and the following day on Friday the 13th of March. That's how it's so easy for me to remember that date. And then we closed Monday to prep, and then Tuesday we were remote learning. And so instead of just constantly emailing people, or I don't know, like having like a massive Google Doc, I actually use Google Classroom. So when you open up Google Classroom, the default is just this stream that's not particularly helpful. But if you go to classwork, I have it organized by, here's what Google Classroom is, here's how to set up Google Meets, here's our learning continuity plans. These are all just links to items already in Google Drive, but we have them organized in a way that hopefully makes sense. I saw someone years ago number them and add emojis to it, which I have completely stolen, so feel free to steal that idea. Right, so we use Seesaw to actually push out work for our younger learners. LS is lower school, elementary, right? So here's all our Seesaw stuff. And part of it is just, straight away help.seesaw.me. It's not all stuff that we created. But part of it, is PDFs that we made along the way, screen recordings we created, uploaded to YouTube and linked here. There wasn't actually too much in Google Classroom since most of our middle school teachers were using Google Classroom. Right, again, just a link to support.google.com for Google Meet. On all of these, I tried to create an overview and then also tried to create a PDF. And so, depending on how people want to learn, they have that one pager PDF that gives you the, steps of it and also the video of it. Here's how to use Flipgrid. Here's help.flipgrid.com. Here's some remote learning resources that Flipgrid shared. Here's my video that walks you through it. And here's a PDF. We had some spreadsheets with passwords that people needed. And that was it, right? Starting off. And then again, in the classwork one, as time went on, it was like, hey, if you haven't used vocabulary or Nearpod, here's some more stuff. We dove into Edu protocols, and then I can just click and rearrange those. That should actually go there for ways to just kind of do some next level work with Google Slides in particular. And similar with Apple Clips, there was a couple projects that our second grade teachers were doing, and so created, again, a one-page PDF and a short video for them. And then it was really easy just to jump in and add all of our teachers. So they were in the student role, and then add administrators as teachers. So I did not use grades. I did not use stream. Nearly everything was just organized in classwork and used just material. Right, so give that title and then added our topic. It's not in order here, but it does show up in order on the classwork page. Does that make sense? I think it's the best example of how you could use that. All right, so I just had you kind of randomly click on stuff, which kind of feels like I'm phoning in the presentation. I am not, because really I think that's one of the most valuable things you can learn. The next thing is actually looking at Chrome extensions, and so this is specific to Google Chrome, the application. Chrome extensions will work on Chromebooks or laptops or desktops. Chrome extensions are not going to work on mobile devices. So if you don't know the Chrome Web Store, then I can actually just throw this link maybe directly in the chat if you want it. Look at that. So I'm going to just click on each one of these. You're welcome to do that also. So here's a direct link to the Chrome Web Store, right, where you can search by all the extensions. There's a couple I really wanted to highlight. Google Meet Grid View, and we have a great workaround. We're a one-to-one iPad school, and so in Zoom, you get the really nice grid view, but you weren't able to do that in Google Meet, certainly back in March and April. In the last few weeks, there's been more built in with desktop, but not iPads. And so this is what Google Meet Grid View looks like. If you wanted to add it, you just click Add to Chrome. It's going to give you a heads up. You click Add Extension, and then it's going to pop it right up here. And so then whenever you open up Google Meet, it's going to give you the option. It gives you this little icon with either a line through it, meaning it's disabled or enabled. And that's all there is to it. And then suddenly you can see everybody in the call. Our one workaround for this to get grid view on student devices is for the teacher to use this Chrome extension and then share their screen. So the frame rate was a little bit off. It looked a little choppy like this, although the audio is actually good. And then students were able to see. So by screen sharing with the teacher using Google Meet Grid View Chrome extension, our students were able to see each other. So particularly as we were starting Google Meet calls, we would start in this view, and then sometimes teachers would switch over and share their screen and switch over to slides. So if you've not played around with that one, that is a must-have these days, particularly if you're using Google Meet. I left this up there on purpose. It's been driving me crazy. This with the 9, the waffle that's 9, that is the latest. The original one, I don't know why they did a different one. The original one is only 4. So if you see the 4, you can right click, or if you're on an Apple, control click, and you want to actually remove the one that has 4 on it. So I'm going to remove that from Chrome. You don't want to have the 4 boxes of Google Meet Grid View. That will break things. You want to have the one with the 9. So there's a couple more I wanted to make sure you knew of. One of my favorites is the Bitmoji. Where are my Bitmoji friends? I was expecting someone to unmute right away and be like, yes, Kathy's with me. There we go. It's the best. So I have found, particularly with remote learning, working from home, which means working on the floor of my bedroom because we have 3 kids that take over the house, um, trying to communicate kind of tone and I try, particularly when people are kind of, like really stressed with something, to keep things kind of light and happy. Um, it's hard to do that via email. Email for me feels like really formal. So adding more emojis, adding Bitmojis, and getting that on your desktop is done with this Chrome extension. So you can see up here, I have my Chrome extension. If I single click on it, it's going to load up all of my Bitmojis, which is the best. These are all images. So if I wanted to share, um, where's my superhero one? Like if someone's like, you're the best, I could, right? If you click on it, it's like, you're wrong. You have to right click and then copy the image. And then I would paste that into an email. By default in Gmail, they're teeny tiny. And then if you single click on it, you can make it nice and big. So my use of both emojis and Bitmojis has gone up dramatically since we've been learning at a distance, just to try and add a bit more joy and a little less formality to the email, because it feels so dry, particularly when I can tell somebody's like really anxious about something. My computer just isn't working and it's this and that. A little Bitmoji gives them a little, like, with my broken finger at them, like, we're gonna be okay. Plus they're just awesome. They're the best. um, there are just so many extensions. These are two of my favorite that I use pretty regularly. If you happen to be using LastPass as a password manager, that is one of those that just having that as a Chrome extension is the best. If you go to log into like one of our school blogs, normally you'd have to type in your username and your password. But because I have this as a Chrome extension, LastPass shows up right there. And then I can just click on it. Depending on how recently you've logged in, it might prompt you to do your password. Because my computer does not leave my house, I have it just autofill 24 hours at a time. So every 24 hours I put in my password, otherwise it'll just autofill. So that's the LastPass password manager. It's good stuff. Bitmoji is the best. That's where we are right now. I can close that one. And
Well, there's
that's
a
not what I
question
wanted.
in the chat
Yeah.
about creating common criteria in setting up teachers' G classrooms so kids can navigate more easily.
Yeah. Let's see, where was from Casey?
Yes.
Yeah. So I agree. I think that there's a balance of giving teachers autonomy, which particularly those middle school, high school teachers really value their autonomy, but then also maybe just having, kind of best practices, or like at this school, it's really helpful to use like maybe the classwork tab, and just explicitly naming that, so that when kids pop in, that first topic is going to be like syllabus, class description, or something. Um, like chunking out a little bit so that students are able to have more consistent experience, I think is really important. I would encourage you not to make every single one exactly the same, because teachers will become resentful pretty quickly. But yeah, I think actually naming that, Casey, is super, super important. We actually ran into that problem pretty quickly, and students just were flexible. And they're like, with this teacher, it looks this way. With that teacher, it looks that way. The one thing that we did say you must do is how teachers would grade and post grades. So we just said, like, use Google Classroom or don't for grading. We don't care. But for our SIS and LMS, which for us is Blackbaud, it's a very independent school one that I don't particularly like. That's where grades must go. And so, yes, some teachers use Google Classroom for grading, some didn't. And I will definitely readily admit that that was frustrating for students. So I think that as we look to the fall, having more uniformity would be important. but really figuring out what are those must-haves and really just trying to enforce those must-haves and not trying to control all the things. So a Bitmoji office. I like that, Kathy. Yeah, and Todd, yeah, I know a lot of people have gone back and forth between Zoom and Meet. Yeah. Thanks for hopping in with that question. And then the last thing I just wanted to clarify, what I just explained were Chrome extensions. There are also web apps, particularly if you are on a Chromebook. This is kind of your homepage when you click on things. So what comes to mind are like any sort of robotics things like Sphero will actually launch as a web app. And so it feels like an application, but it plays within the Chrome web browser. So I don't want to go too deep down the rabbit hole of web apps. They tend to just kind of sort themselves out, but just so you know, like what we talked about was an extension and not a web app. If you have any favorite extensions, please add those to the chat. And if you don't, that's okay. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to share out in the chat. Again, I'm going to mute myself and set a timer. How might we encourage more curiosity and playfulness among teachers and staff? Hey Siri, set a timer for 2 minutes.
Okay, your timer.
Or where there's 3 or 4 kids who are supposed to be doing distance learning and there's only one computer in the house that's available. How do we support that? Anyone out there listening who might have a response to that, that it's something you're doing that's working well?
Yeah, I'll open that up for everyone. Any thoughts on that?
I can't claim it's something that I'm doing, but I heard of school yesterday and I thought it was brilliant for students that are kind of stuck in that digital divide and they don't have access to the internet. They were transferred in students bringing the kids to school, even socially distanced in a multi-purpose room, school cafeteria, where they can get Wi-Fi access over Chrome. I don't know who it is, but apparently for that school, it's working well.
Do you know where that school is, or that school district is, Aaron?
Don't remember offhand.
I mean, I know talking with a few of you on this Zoom that who I see and talk to somewhat regularly, there are a lot of conversation going on around now about the groups that we know are totally not getting served well. Special day kids, for example. Many of our ELD 1s and 2s. Kids for whom we've already had interventions at school that are not getting those the same way at home, that we've got to find ways to bring them back into the buildings in the fall to give them any kind of shot at success. I assume most of your districts are at least having those conversations right now, like who needs to be on campus on a regular basis and how is all of that going to happen?
I think, Marty, that even in a high-risk situation, if you look at the guidelines that have been provided on those 3 railroad tracks that we've seen a million times in California, even in a high-risk situation, you can have students cohorted in groups of 12 to 1. And so kind of like that cafe model where you have students working, but then you have an adult there to help facilitate. At PCS, we sometimes call those people the homework nannies. Like, I'm not here to teach you content. Instead, my job is to help you make a plan for getting your work done. Encourage you to take healthy breaks and then get back to work, right? So kind of thinking about, particularly if we're in a high-risk model, we can't bring students to school, or even if we're in a medium risk, bringing some students to school more frequently in order to provide them kind of, particularly kids who have executive functioning issues and can't really plan on their own. I think that that's something that we need to be advocating for whatever structure we go back into next year.
Is anybody out there doing that very well now, supplying extra support for kids and families, part of the teaching part, but the social emotional learning support that's needed like that on a regular basis?
It's funny because I can tell you we're a little bit different. We're not a comprehensive program. So, it comes for their 1 hour weekly, and then they have their hybrid class for whatever class they feel they need the greatest level of the instruction, direct instruction. But when we had to step away and send everybody home, we expected our teachers to still maintain their 1 hour weekly appointments with kids, just doing it over distance, over Zoom or FaceTime or whatever medium they could to connect with kids. First and foremost, for social emotional concerns, how is your family doing and how are you doing, that kind of stuff. And so we did call logs. And then in a recent conversation with one of my teachers, I went through the call logs with him, and I was really disappointed to see how many times the colleague didn't catch up with our student, the student that he was responsible for. And so I think
can I interrupt? Can you hear me, person speaking?
Monitor that. If we're going to ask
Hello?
it, we have to do a better job of monitoring that.
So I think we have some very
I've got another question here that I think is
okay, this is really
will address
strange.
some of the larger concepts in grading.
Bill, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm not sure what happened. Everybody was muted except one guest. I tried to insert my voice. I don't think they heard me. So I went ahead and muted that person.
Okay.
And I don't know how that happened. That's never happened to me on Zoom before, but I think that was another session.
It sounded like it kind of, I don't know. Anyway, let's, I'm going to keep us going on our track. I know that there's just so much on our minds. I'm going to try and keep us a little bit more on topic. As we look at our second topic with agency, is really trying to give our students and our faculty agency around their learning and how they engage with each other. One thing I talked a little bit about, and maybe I'll just leave it like this so we can kind of click around because I have some examples I'm going to show you in just a moment, is this idea, you maybe heard about it as Genius Hour, 20% time. At Hillbrook, we decided to call it Reach Beyond Block. The idea that you can give students a percentage of the day, maybe it's Friday afternoons, maybe it's, a little bit of time right before lunch every day, maybe it's an entire day, just however you want to slice it, but really giving them some agency over what they learn. And then you create the parameters of like, all right, at some point you're going to have to do a presentation, maybe it needs to have this many slides or it needs to be on this type of paper, and then they will have to present the thing they learned. One thing that we have begun doing is actually doing this with our faculty. And so the idea that you can actually give some faculty agency over what they want to learn in a faculty meeting has been really, really cool. If you have heard of ed camps, we've done a version of that. It's not technically an ed camp because it's not open to all, so we call them unconferences. And so a couple times a year, and definitely at the beginning of the year, part of our faculty meeting is an unconference where anyone, faculty or staff, they have to be at the meeting, but they can lead a conversation around a variety of topics. So sometimes it's a book or a movie that tends to be timely around kind of current events. Sometimes it's a tech tool. Sometimes it's something around mindfulness or social emotional learning. It's really open to kind of whatever they want to talk about. And just the simple idea of giving dedicated time in a faculty meeting, or typically be an administrator like me, and this is not lost on me that I am doing the exact thing of just kind of standing up and talking at you. We know this is not how people learn best. And so trying to honor that time during those dedicated faculty meetings to give people the ability to actually do their own learning and have some choice and some agency with what they learn. And then actually called out one specific thing. If we were doing this remote, to actually create a Google Meet link or a Zoom link for those students or for those faculty members, and then have them hop on it. For us, we ended up just for our faculty meetings, for kind of breakout rooms, whether it was assigned or by choice, we just had a really simple, like, I think we had, depending on the meeting, 10 or 20 different breakout groups. And it was just a table that was, 5 columns and 2 or 4 rows down. And then ahead of time, an administrator just created a Google Meet meeting and then just pasted in those links. So when it was time to break out, you would just go to that Google Doc, click on the link, and away you went. And then, sometimes there were shared notes in a Google Doc, sometimes there were shared slides, but those two together have worked really well for us remotely. One really, really simple thing is just having a Google Doc for meetings for the whole year. Whether it's announcements, whether it's ongoing meetings, where did I move this down a little bit? Let's open up a new tab real quick. So I told you about that hub, that thing behind me that we've been building, that big makerspace. I have kept track of all the meetings we've been having for quite some time. And so one trick that I like, and I've shared this with a handful of people, anyone that missed a meeting, you can just have all of my notes from the last however many years. Do you see how this says heading 1 right there? So that gives me it grouped by years. And then each time we have a meeting, that's going to be heading 2. And so the way that's organized, if I show the document outline, did you see that little thing hidden there? Maybe you know about it and you're like, yeah, of course, I'm awesome. Maybe you're like, I never noticed that. I've been on Google Docs every day and I've never seen document outline. What that gives you is it builds it based on headings. And so heading 1 is all of the meetings I've had in 2020 around just the hub. And then every meeting is heading 2. Same thing, 2019. And then every meeting I had is heading 2. And so very quickly, I have all of my notes and I can share all of my notes. Gosh, we've had a lot of meetings. 2018, heading 1, and then every meeting is heading 2. And I can go all the way back to actually 2016. In October, we actually started meeting with groups, with teachers to say like, what are we gonna do with this building? And so I could actually go back to that first meeting, October 19th, 2016. And if we were in a meeting this past week, talking about science gardens, right? I could just Command F and paste science garden, and there have been 3 times in the last 4 years we've talked about science gardens, right? Super easy to share with whomever, really easy for me to organize, Command F to find. Doing this for your own meetings, if you have a cohort of people like our program admin, our operations admin meetings, senior leadership meetings, we have just a running Google Doc. My one-on-one meetings with my boss, I have is just a running Google Doc. I could also see this if you are a site leader, sharing it with your faculty, just having one document. Someone mentioned Google Sites, that could be another way. In Classroom, you could post an announcement each time. The idea though is that you can get away from everything having to be an email or everything having to be a separate document. It's really, really easy to do. One thing I've been trying to get our faculty on is actually Slack. And some are super new at, some are not, but particularly with our middle school senior leader, Amy will send an email to a Google Doc and just every time, just file share it with every middle school teacher. It could just be in Slack, just dropping in that link to the Google Doc. Hey, middle school notes, here we go. Here's everything you need to know as a middle school teacher for this week. It doesn't have to be an email every time, which in the past it has been, but just thinking about what are those systems you can create, whether it's as simple as just a Google Doc, it might be Google Classroom, might be Google Sites, so that people don't have to search their email again and again and again. Makes a pretty big difference for us. It's really straightforward, and it's good stuff. So I showed you that hub meeting. I talked about kind of the one-on-one, and then those weekly notes. So those are your 3. Is anyone doing something similar to this and has an example I didn't mention? Awkward pause on a Zoom call.
Well, there's a question about using Google Classroom as an idea to share events, meetings, et cetera, rather than email. So sort of in that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, if you're moving from email, definitely play with, maybe get a couple people in Classroom and test it out over the summer and see what it's like. And you're like, oh my gosh, Google Classroom is the best for this. I know some site leaders that use Smore. Is it smore.com maybe? I know some people that are using Wakelet that are non-Google tools. I mean, Google already in that ecosystem has so many cool things. Even just a Google Doc makes it really, really simple. But yeah, Classroom would be a great one. I think just getting away from everything has to be an email. There's so many ways that you can leverage those tools that are more powerful. So again, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to chat. Oops, there's my command key. I'm going to give you 2 minutes with that question. This time, set a timer for 2 minutes. We're just going to type it into the Google search bar, and you're off. And then I have a little beep in my AirPods. All right, so our third and fourth category is going to move pretty quickly through these ones. We're going to talk a little about taking risks, right? So trying new things, and for you as an administrator, it might be trying new platforms. There's one I want to share, and I have a few different examples of it. It's called Form Mule. So this is an add-on to a spreadsheet. And I'm going to show you what that looks like in one particular use case. And then right after that, there's other add-ons. There's one called Autocrat that, actually, maybe I'll just show you the Autocrat one. I think diving deep into this one, you can actually do, you know, like that old school mail merge where it's, you know, bracket, bracket, first name. You can do that with Google Slides. So you actually create a template in Google Slides with that little, you know, bracket, bracket, first name. And then with a spreadsheet, you can actually run a mail merge using Autocrat. So Form Mule is a great way where, like, if you're planning kind of a conference, if you want to deal with some sort of, you know, vacation requests, you can create a whole bunch of templates inside of Form Mule and have that, you know, when people submit a Google form, it can automatically send them an email. So if you find yourself sending really similar emails again and again and again, it would be worth diving into Form Mule. There's a couple of videos that'll walk you through it great. With Autocrat, we did Everyone Can Code, connected with Computer Science Education Week, maybe you know it as Hour of Code. So for our middle school students, I used Form Mule, and Form Mule generated an email for each of them because our middle school students have, here it is, our middle school students have emails. So it's really easy just to hop on to Form Mule and say, hello, Shay. For session 1, you are doing dance party. For session 2, you're doing AI for oceans. And then, you know, where that location would be. So that's how we use Form Mule. For our younger learners, we used Autocrat. And so again, I'm going to go to add-ons and then pop on Autocrat. And so you choose a template. And so this was my template. It's one slide. I made sure that it would print nicely where our first through fourth grader student's name would be. This is the location of it, and this is the name of that session. Right? The really cool thing with Autocrat is that you can drop an image behind text. And this has been the only way I've been able to figure out how to get image text so it looks like, you know, I custom created all of these, and I very much did not. So if I pop back over to our spreadsheet for lower school, Everyone Can Code, here's my template I chose. I just showed you that template. If I go next, right, it noticed, oh, bracket, bracket, first name. What is that? Okay, cool. That's the column A called first name, and it's going to mail merge. Session 1 is right. It's not going to let me see it. Yeah, well, that session. So Osmo, Chrome Music Lab, Bloxels, that's session 1. Session 2, merge to session 2, right? Really straightforward. Session 1 location is that column. If I keep going next, I could choose the file name. I chose it to be a PDF, which is awesome. And then I could choose where that went. And so when I clicked run, the next one will be run. I'm not going to click on that. It created 140-page PDF. So Adeline, here we are. Session 1 is AI for Oceans in room C3. You're in class 1A, and then here's your session 2. Alyssa, you're also in 1A. For session 1, you're in Bloxels. That's in room N2. And so this was Jason. Hey, how are you doing? We're talking Autocrat. I just saw you pop in. And it goes through 140 students. This is actually my middle kid, Charlie. So she was in room 1A. Her first session was Osmo in room C1. And so I didn't have to create all of these. I just had to create one of them and then right from this PDF, print, and I have 140 tickets ready to go. and that was done using Autocrat. So that's how you would mail merge, but it's not just your old school mail merge, it's mail merge with Google Slides, which I think is kind of incredible. So the idea of these tools, of these add-ons, is there's definitely a learning curve, and I messed up a lot, kind of figuring it out. But the idea is to get away from like, oh, can I be like a little bit faster? Where if you really learn things like Form Mule or Autocrat, once you get that locked in, it is just going to save you like so much time. And this is definitely a Google thing that they talk about. It's not this kind of incremental change. It's this like 10 times, 100 times change that makes a really big difference. So I'm curious if you've used Autocrat before, if you use Formule, maybe what's something that you have. If not, I'm gonna throw this in the chat. I'm gonna give you just kind of 1 minute. Definitely great for certificates, absolutely. Yeah, feedback is another great one when you're doing walkthroughs. Yes. Here's that question. We're just gonna go 1 minute. Hey Siri, set a timer for 1 minute.
Your timer is set for 1 minute.
And I'm gonna mute myself. That is your prompt for that third section. All right, that is your time. Go ahead and finish your last thought. In our last session, we're going to look at collaboration. And so as we think about like, how do you collaborate remotely? I'm going to actually just jump into and dive into this last slide. Is actually how you can edit URLs inside of anything that is Googly. And I have a link for you. I created a whole slide just for it. If you click on this link, if you have the slide deck, it will, it should take you to a blog post. And so, boy, my computer is like really slow right now. So if I grab anything really, like right now I'm inside of Google Slides, let's just run with that, right? So you can see at the end it's /edit. You can change this to / a handful of things as an easy way to create your own templates, or as an easy way to make it look less like a Google Doc and more like just kind of a website. So if I change it to view, take a look at what's going to happen when I refresh this page. I've actually never done this with slides. I'm not sure what it's going to do. It looks actually exactly the same, but I can't edit maybe. Maybe let's do this with a Google Doc that I know will work. If I go back to like those hub notes. Come on, you can load, buddy. Yes, Sir Links a Lot is another way of doing this kind of automatically. Jason, I like to have less Chrome extensions. At some point I had like 50 Chrome extensions and like websites would take forever to load. So I've slowly like tried to, if I can do it on my own, I will do it on my own. But yes, if you don't want to do it this way, Sir Links a Lot is a great Chrome extension that will do it for you. So if I change this to just view, it's going to take away my ability to edit this document. And so depending on how I want to share this with faculty, sometimes I will manually change this link and share that. If I change it to preview, it's going to change it even more. I also teach as an adjunct faculty for some EdTech master's courses with Concordia University Irvine. Inside of Blackboard, which I'm just not a fan of, linking to rubrics or assignment descriptions, I will manually change those docs to /preview, and you can see all of, file, edit, format, view, help, all of that is gone. So it's just this really nice, clean view. That's just /preview. And then if I copy this link and share that with people, they're not able to edit it. That's a really cool idea when you want to try and hack like Google Slides into not being just Google Slides. One thing that I wish we were able to do more of at our school that we just haven't figured out the ability to do is use like Pages or like Adobe InDesign and collaborate on that. When we are making projects, we'll actually make the brochure inside of Google Slides. And what you get with Google Slides is you have the ability to collaborate on it in real time in a way that I have found frustrated with, either Apple Pages or Adobe InDesign. If you're already using Google tools, just use Google Slides. You can go to File, Page Setup, make it be 8.5 by 11, maybe 2 slides, one's the front, one's the back, and then you get to essentially have like design software or slide deck, and you're off to the races. It's really cool. It's been like a great way for us to collaborate on kind of end of the year PDFs we need to create for programs, but not have to dive into, what's your Adobe ID? No, just use Google Slides and you're good. So with that, I know our time, it's 10:30. Any closing thoughts, any questions, Denise, anything I missed in the chat?
I didn't see questions. I saw comments.
Okay.
So I think we're good there.
Great. Awesome. These slides are both in all those resources you have. Also, just billselleck.com will get it to you. And your next meeting starts in about 5 minutes. So thank you. Happy Wednesday, everybody.
Thank you, Bill. And thank you, everyone, for being here today.